Lebo, can you unblur your background,
Oh,
please?
sorry. My apologies. Is that fine?
Yes, perfect.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're super excited for the discussion that we're going to be having today, which is around Corporate Wellness Week 2026, the human behind the job title. Joining us today, I have two very special guests who I am about to introduce. Firstly, we have Professor Lene Grobner, who is a registered industrial psychologist, workplace and trauma counselor with over 25 years of experience in the workplace mental health and well-being. She is a professor at Northwest University's School of Industrial Psychology and Human Resource Management, where she leads the master's program in industrial psychology and conducts research on work-related well-being. She is a National Research Foundation related researcher, a two-time recipient of Northwest University's Excellence in Teaching Award, and co-founder of the Workplace Counseling Academy. Alongside her academic work, she practices as a workplace and trauma counselor, mental health coach, and HPCSA internship supervisor. She has also contributed to the mental health work interest group within SIOPSA, helping advance workplace mental health practices and support across the profession. Professor Lene, thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
Thank you, Lebo. It's nice to be
Thank
here.
you. Thank you so much. Next up, we also do have Debbie House, who is a clinical psychologist with more than 38 years of experience in private practice in the south of Johannesburg. She obtained her master's degree in clinical psychology from Potchefstroom University in 1986 and has completed advanced training in the Ericksonian and ego state hypnotherapy, medical hypnoanalysis, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, as well as eye movement integration. Debbie is the author of two books outlining the therapeutic model she developed to identify and reprocess unconscious patterns underlying emotional difficulties. She also facilitates workshops in movement, meditation, constellation therapy, and sound therapy. Debbie, thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
Thanks, Lebahan. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. Now, ladies, this week being Corporate Wellness Week, there is a lot that we need to unpack around this topic. And for all of our viewers, I think it's such an important discussion to have. Professor Lene, I think to maybe start us off, why should organizations view mental health as a business issue rather than simply an employee well-being issue?
Thanks, Lebo. Well, it is a business issue. It's a performance driver. It's not only a perk. If you look at mental health, when things go wrong, productivity is affected, people are absent, absenteeism increases, employee turnover can be affected. Not even to say when mistakes are made. There's a lot of risks involved. So there is a business case to be made for mental health. Also, the other thing is it is a legal requirement for employers. So really to look after the employees' health and safety is a very important business decision and to be legally compliant. The Occupational Health and Safety Act, for example, the Employee Equity Act, really to reasonably accommodate employees. So leadership obviously prioritize profit, performance, effectiveness. So for me to only look at wellness as an HR function is not, it's more than that. There is really a business case involved.
I'm so grateful that we're having these discussions today, especially around mental health in the workplace. And I love how you mentioned that, the employee's well-being has to be a priority, right? And Debbie, I want to bring you in here. Behind every job title is a person, right? Why is it important for workplaces to recognize the human experience behind employee performance?
It helps to move away from the mechanical model where humans have just got to perform and live up to expectations, which are sometimes overwhelming. So, by recognizing the human experience, it just brings back that ability to empathize, to understand. And the human performance, once there's a lot more empathy and connection, is directly linked to performance as well. So it's important to bring in the whole context of a person rather than just performing.
And maybe as a follow-up, how do stress, anxiety, burnout, and depression typically show up in the workplace, even when someone appears to be coping?
It will manifest often in anger outbursts, which are often irrational or triggered by very small little things which might seem irrelevant to other people. But it's just an indication of an overwhelm of emotional content where the triggers and the temper is very short. Can also indicated by loss of memory where they aren't able to retain information and simple tasks that they might been able to do before they don't have access to that information. Can also manifest through weight loss or weight gain, being absent, and also over pleasing, over trying to prove themselves, pleasing them to others, also may indicate a loss of ability to authentically present themselves comfortably. Those are some examples.
Sure. And thank you so much for highlighting that. These examples that you shared are those that we don't often see, especially in the workplace environment, right? Because one's lifestyle changes might differ. How we see them physically in the office, they might appear as someone who's coping, but in actual fact, there are some of those signs that we are not seeing that are very subtle. And maybe Professor Lene, if I can bring you in here, what workplace factors are currently driving increase in stress, burnout, anxiety, and emotional fatigue amongst employees?
Well, it depends on sectors, but what I've been reading a lot now in reports in the media lately is the mid-year fatigue. That's becoming much more common across South African workplaces. So for me, that's typically not taking enough, let's just call it rest. I like to call it intervals of rest. So those periods of rest that you build in apart from having a full stop at the end of the day or the end of the week, really having those time, allowing yourself to recuperate. But statistics of the last 2 years have really shown workplace factors such as economic uncertainty leading to mental health issues, financial pressures, financial burdens, the rising cost of inflation and all of those consequences and subsequent debt, debt. Also, that always on culture, always have to be available, the 24/7 that we have nowadays by working online and being available online. That creates a lot of anxiety and also anxiety around AI. So burnout really being very prevalent, which is actually driven by these systemic workplace issues.
And the factors that you've just gone through now, it's quite sad to hear how people don't really take care of their well-being, and wait, right, to say no, I'm still gonna push. It's still mid-year. I'll survive till, because a lot of people do take that time off closer to the festive season, and don't take that interval rest that you were referring to. And such conversations, we want to empower employees out there to take care of their well-being, to prioritize their mental health. Now, sometimes employees, Professor Lene, often wait until they are in crisis before seeking support. What barriers prevent them from actually accessing help a lot earlier?
Funny enough, I still think stigmatization. We have moved a lot over the years and made a lot of increase and improvement towards normalizing conversations around mental health, but there's still that fear of judgment, lack of access, lack of availability for help. Then there's an aspect of thinking that I can sort this out myself. I can manage this. It's not a crisis yet. The crisis view that we call it. So I will only need support once this becomes a crisis, and then it runs into being too late or almost too late. So not in time or timeously searching for help.
Sure. And a lot of people, especially in the workplace, there is this tendency of, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to get through it myself. But there's also this pressure, right? These are the tasks you need to complete. This is what the deadline is. And there isn't really a lot of planning ahead around the different tasks, that they have to complete. And one ends up feeling quite burnt out. They feel a lot of pressure as well during that time, and not knowing, how to even get the help or even access the necessary help. Now, Debbie, to bring you into the conversation, and I love what Professor Lene said, and maybe to ask you, what impact can ongoing workplace pressure have on a person's relationships, physical health, and overall quality of their life?
Well, it's important to know that the workplace will manifest a lot of the same dynamics that an individual is experiencing in their own family dynamics. So, a lot of the patterns that they experienced in early childhood in their own family contexts will resurface in the workplace. So, often the workplace, if you look at the patterns, you'll see they're very similar to early childhood. So, it's often an opportunity for the individual in the workplace to actually recognize that the boss or the manager is treating me the same way that my mother was treating me in early childhood, because often there are parallels. So those are kind of things for them to become aware of, that things that happen at the workplace are not random, and they are an opportunity to look at it on a deeper level so that they can grow from it and actually benefit from it by having that awareness that nothing's random, these patterns do repeat. So often, indications that it is a lot of stress is people will start maybe being over codependent, where they overshare their things with people, or they start being very absent, or um, in that way, there'll be noticeable differences in how they're performing and able to be balanced in the moment in their own state of.
Sure. It's interesting to hear how, as an individual, as much as this is the type of person I am, there is an impact that I'm receiving, whether it is from the workplace, whether it's from my personal relationships, whether it's from family, and my upbringing also can have an impact on how I do things growing up. And it's quite interesting, and I love what you said, that it's very important to start recognizing the things that you went through in childhood, and the things that you've built on in childhood, so that we put in the changes and the necessary changes in place, because it does obviously impact your overall quality of life. Sure. And now, Professor Lene, maybe to find out from you, what role do leaders and managers play in creating a psychologically safe workplace where employees can feel comfortable to ask for help and support?
A major role, the role. One of the major aspects in the job demands resources theory, or the burnout theory, if I can call it that, is the role of supervisor support, and the important role that supervisors and colleagues have to support fellow colleagues and assist where someone can feel in a negative state. Having efficient supervisor support or line manager, leader, manager support can really efficiently make a huge difference in someone's mental state. Apart from that, a manager is often the first point of contact where you see something's wrong, something is not sitting right, this person needs help, or noticing the absenteeism, whatever, alcohol abuse, or just the mental um, low mood or the mental state of someone. So it's so important for managers to be trained in mental health support, psychological first aid. Being that first point of contact makes a difference. If you can, at that space where a manager is kind of like a shock absorber, to say, I'm here for you. I hear what you're saying. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You just need to validate and acknowledge and support and provide that support. Goes a long way in terms
Yeah.
of supporting someone who's really struggling.
There's a question that we have from our audience, Professor Lene, and it reads as follows. If I'm struggling with my mental health, how do I approach my manager about it when I'm worried about being judged or that it might affect my career?
Yeah, no, I think that's really difficult because I think a lot of employees sit in that position. And I always say when you want to have a difficult conversation with someone or have to approach someone, whether you're a teen, you have to approach a parent, or in the workplace having to approach a senior person, look for the right time, the right place, and the right opportunity. Doesn't help for you to find someone in the parking lot or on their way out or really in a hurry. Really choose the time right, make an appointment, set it up where you are comfortable to have that conversation, because it is a difficult conversation where you do feel in a place of you're not well, you're not feeling your best, so you can feel that sense of shame or feeling judged or having fear to share. And so really communicating in clear, factual language. If you have to write it down so that you have your notes, and set the expectations. I am going through a tough time. This is what's been going on, without sharing all the details unnecessarily, exposing yourself. But I'm not coping well. This is what I need, or this is where I am at the moment. I'm not sure if you know it. This is the situation. This is the alternative. These are the options. This is what needs to be done. And to be honest about this is difficult for me to approach you. I am afraid of being judged. It's not an easy conversation. I was thinking about what to say all night, just be honest. The thing is also who you approach. If it is an unapproachable person, it's not going to go well at all in any case. So to choose the time, and in that instance, then I would really focus on the facts and keeping it simple, and in terms of what is needed, what are the expectations, what are the alternatives, to have a plan to discuss with such a person.
That is such a practical example that you've given there, Professor Lene, to say that, listen, I'm going through a hard time. And I think one thing that we need to acknowledge is that it's very hard to open up, right? It's very hard to be vulnerable and to say, I'm actually going through a hard time. But it's also important that we sort of have the facts, and that we make sure that it's very constructive, and that we make sure that whatever it is that we're communicating to our manager, to our supervisor, that we're very clear on what the expectation is, because you also can't expect of your manager or your supervisor to be of support or to be of assistance if that's not very clear. So I love the example that you used to sort of explain that, and thank you so much, and I hope it was helpful to our audience. Now, Debbie, how can employees tell the difference between normal work-related stress and a mental health concern that may require professional support? Sometimes in our day-to-day lives, we get through the day, as much as it's a very stressful day, we don't realize that, sometimes this is not normal, right? Because it's a build-up, it's a habit that we're building. So how can employees tell the difference between the two?
One of the factors and indications is lack of sleep, where you just aren't able to switch the mind off the chatter, the hypervigilance, and the constant mental concerns and worries about that, which can affect sleep, which adds then to the inability to cope with all the daily functions at work. Often, nightmares during sleep can be an indication that there's unconscious processing that hasn't been that hasn't been happening that the unconscious is trying to do. So sleep patterns are a clear indication that there is something that's on a much deeper level that needs to be addressed. As I mentioned before, also anger. If there's anger outbursts where you're feeling out of control, unable to censor what you say and how it comes across, where it becomes very overwhelming and expressive in a way that it backfires against you, can also be an indication of that. Also, if your body's getting sick and if you're getting a lot of illnesses and constantly being broken down with your immune system, sometimes that can also be an indication of mental problems that need to be addressed, because the mind and the body do work together very deeply. So that's also an indication. Crying spells can also be an indication where they just have to run to the toilet suddenly just to cry because they can't cope. These are some of the examples that the problem is actually a little bit deeper than just normal work stress that we all encounter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what you've just described now, Debbie, is so vital and important, because sometimes we tend to normalize certain behavior, right? I'm just feeling overwhelmed. I just need some time to myself, and you have that outbreak, or that outburst rather, but you don't realize that this is a pattern that you're building, and it starts now affecting your performance at work. And it's very important that to all of our viewers that are joining, it's very important to start being able to identify, to say, is this normal work-related stress, or do I actually need professional support and assistance? And the earlier we obviously recognize these signs and symptoms, the better, because then we're able to reach out for help and get the support that we need. Now, Professor Lene, how can workplaces identify signs of disengagement, burnout, or even mental health challenges before they begin affecting performance and retention, especially highlighting on what Debbie has mentioned, around normal work-related stress versus mental health concern? How can workplaces identify the signs a lot earlier?
The thing is, you will never really know just by face value. Someone can look as if they're coping well, but they're actually not. They're really suffering and really not coping. So I would really recommend wellness check-ins. Really catch the issue before it becomes a problem. Proactively address well-being at work. If you see signs of disengagement, it's already quite far down the line. So it should have been caught earlier. The theory I mentioned earlier, the job demands resources theory, is actually very simple. It says if you want someone to do their job, if you expect X of an employee, you need to provide them the means to do that, the resources. Sure. Otherwise, it can become, coping becomes, has two outcomes. It can be negative, to say burnout is an outcome because I have to do my job, I don't have the means. That can mean anything in terms of time, support, physical resources, not coping well with the demand of the work, the stress of the work itself. The second outcome is then a positive outcome. So there's stresses at work. I am under pressure. I have to perform in this project. I have a due date, but I have the resources. I'm enjoying my work. I'm engaged. I'm happy at work, but it is quite a stressful time. I am doing well, but it means that proactively you need to budget for that time, that interval of rest, like I said earlier. So you really have those wellness check-ins. In terms of surveys, polls, where are the employees? Are they coping well in terms of do you have what you need? And then checking the engagement versus burnout levels. Those can also indicate the red flags. And then providing support proactively to say, we notice in this team you are struggling. We want to provide resources for you to cope better. What can we do to help? Before it's a problem, to proactively address those areas.
Yeah. The minute there's disengagement, it can be very hard. And I love what you said, that can be very hard to find a way out of the
Yeah.
disengagement when our employees are also feeling quite burnt out. And I love how you also mentioned that as much as we have expectations to say, this is the task that I want you to complete, are we actually giving them the resources to complete the tasks, and to make sure that they're feeling very supported during that time? Because sometimes you end up feeling the burnout, you end up feeling very stressed and the pressure, but there's no help, there's no support available, there are no resources in place as well. So I love the tips that you shared there. Now, Debbie, for employees, who are feeling overwhelmed, but they don't know where to start, what are some practical first steps they can take to protect their mental health?
The first step is just introspection and awareness of what they're feeling and acknowledgement of their feelings without denying it or trying to carry on regardless and just to suppress and deny their own feelings. So it's just to acknowledge and to be present with it without fear. And then to have the courage to actually believe in solutions. Because a lot of people, their whole lives, have learned that solutions don't exist. So they give up and then they lose faith in even trying or reaching out because of that belief system. So to reinstate that faith in solutions, which does exist through reaching out. Often, if that individual as a child did reach out either to parents or teachers and they were rejected or cut off or not supported in an adequate way, then they learn for the rest of their lives just to keep quiet and to go within and to try and cope alone. So often it's part of their patterns, as I mentioned before, in early
Yeah.
childhood, which is based on the responses that they've habitually received as to how much they trust in reaching out to others. So it's overriding that, having the faith that communication of where they're at without fear can often open up doorways to solutions, whereas which they might not have ventured into if they stay in solitude. So it's having the courage to reinstate that faith in solutions. Also, it's starting to just raise their self-worth to realize that they do deserve quality of life
Yeah.
and that you don't have to wake up every morning and say, "Oh, I'm dreading going to work." That there is a possibility where you can have the best quality life, where you participating in mind, body, and soul in creating the magic of your own life, where you become a co-creator in your life, not a victim. So those are examples of new belief systems that need to come in for the individual, for them to be able to cope and to start trusting that things can be solved.
Sure. And Debbie, I love what you said around that the first step is to acknowledge, right? Sometimes we have the tendency of, what, I'll be fine, I'll be okay, and we suppress the emotions and we move on. But we don't realize the dangers around suppressing those emotions. Acknowledging that you're going through a hard time is a first step, but also then making sure that you reach out for help without, the fear of being judged. And I love how you shared those practical steps, to say it is okay to reach out for help. And it goes back to what we had mentioned earlier around the childhood habits and how we're brought up, right? That if I was brought up in a way to say we don't discuss certain things, we don't discuss well-being, we don't discuss mental health, we end up not talking about it, and it does impact our quality life at a later stage. So I love how you shared those practical tips. Now, there is a question from our audience, Debbie, which I'd like for us to sort of unpack, and it reads as follows. I often feel guilty taking leave or even stepping away from work when I'm overwhelmed. How can I set healthy boundaries without feeling like I'm letting my team down?
Well, that's important to know that when you let yourself down, indirectly a betrayal of the self will result in outer betrayals as well. Because it's like a candle. You want to light your own candle in a dark room, then all the other people can see. But if you switch your candle off and try and light others, then it's actually not going to be productive. So it's learning to have a good sense of self and self-worth so that you can honor the rhythms of your own being and trust that when I'm balanced, when I'm a role model that's actually navigating my own time to rest, time to work, and flowing with your own rhythms, with a lot of self-respect, you become a role model to inspire others to do the same. So it helps us to move beyond self-sacrifice to please others at the expense of you, where you empty your cup to serve. So the aim is to serve from a full cup, where you can also honor your own being and trust that by giving yourself that self-respect, you'll actually command it from others as well. So it's just having that higher sense of self to trust that I need to honor my own boundaries, my own rhythms now without guilt, trusting that it's actually going to serve the benefits of everyone in the long run, but also to communicate that, to let them know, now I'm needing time out, now I'm just overwhelmed, I'm going to be taking this time out, I'll be back then, and I'll be able to perform a lot better. So it's also being very open and clear.
Yeah. I love the analogy that you shared around, the candle. I've never heard of it before, so I'm also learning. And it reminds me so much of the cup, right? To say, when your cup is empty, how are you expecting to give off to other people? It's very important that you fill your cup first. And I love saying to people, I prefer to give what's overflowing of the cup. I can't give you what's in my cup, but I can give you what's overflowing of it, because the minute you take from my cup, now I need to fill it up constantly. But I love the analogy around the can. I'm definitely going to use it. So, Professor Lynette, what does a truly mentally healthy workplace culture look like, and what benefits does it bring to both employees as well as the organization?
I think culture is so important. It starts in the little things, the way you approach someone, the way people are addressed. If you start and finish a meeting on time, that says I respect your time. It's interesting to ingrain the way that I treat you into the culture, and then with visible support as well, validating what I am saying. So that will, for me, it will also look like normalizing conversations around mental health support, really validating what you're going through. But there's just for me something in it to calm someone's overtaxed, distressed nervous system. When a significant person says, I see you, I take note what you're going through. I see this as difficult. I see you're not coping well. I validate that and I want to help. How can I help? That just calms down a person immediately, and in a physical way to provide that support. So culture of normalizing mental health support, I would say, can be a benefit, offering real-time access to care. And showing respect and keeping confidentiality.
Sure. It's more what you're highlighting sounds to me like the language around, how to have the conversation. And the moment you start noticing that, an employee is going through a hard time, it's very important that you have that conversation, you acknowledge it. The most important thing is acknowledging, to say, listen, I see you, and I hear you, and I might not know how to help and support you, but I'm here for you. It's very encouraging, because then you feel like, actually, I'm not alone in this. And that my employer is here to help and support me. Debbie, before we wrap up, many people derive a strong sense of identity from their work. How can employees maintain a healthy sense of self and purpose outside of their job title?
I think it's relevant because not only do people define themselves by their job title, but they're also defined by many other things such as finances, education status, or material gains or relationships. So often we do identify with these illusory forms of identity which are external to the real you. So it's to ask people questions, who are you really besides your descriptions, which are illusions? And to start remembering the totality of who you really are as an individual beyond those illusions. Because the most powerful sense of self comes from within, as we're able to radiate knowing who I really am, so that it helps you to rise above and transcend those illusions, because otherwise it puts you in a very limited framework of who you should be and who you shouldn't be. So it's to rise above all of those through remembering who you really are, which is a being that has a right to be here just by being yourself, not
Sure.
having to live up to prove or to fit into a box. It's to trust that the way I am, just my own creative spark, is enough for me to have value. And especially if you're having fun and playing, we want to redefine how much joy are you having as also
Mm.
a different sense of self, and giving yourself permission to be able to create joy, magic, and fun in life, which is also a definition of who you really are, as well as the ability to be able to laugh and just be yourself without reservation.
Sure. Debbie, I must say, I got goosebumps from that. Felt like you were speaking to me there. It's so empowering. It's so uplifting. And I love what you said around let's try to identify ourselves outside of our workplace. And I know a lot of people, because they spend so much time at work, it's the one thing that is their priority. But who are you outside of that, right? And you don't have to live up to people's expectations. I love what you said there. You should just be a human being, and you're allowed to be yourself. And those were such amazing, encouraging words that you shared there. Now, from the both of you, if we may, if you could leave employers and employees with one message this Corporate Wellness Week, what would it be? Professor Lynette, you can go first, and then Debbie will follow.
Wow, okay, well, there's so much to say.
Mhm.
I think ultimately for me, it's you want a happy worker, but happy employee. But I think it's meaningful work. It's richer, it's deeper. And if I was an employer, that's what I would want my employee to experience: meaningful work. That means feeling safe. That means doesn't matter even if you're going through a difficult time, to feel safe in that as well. That psychological safety. Let me leave it there.
Sure, Professor Lynette, thank you for that. Debbie, from your side?
For my side, for employers and employees, what I would always remind them is that every challenge and every difficult situation that you encounter is always an opportunity for growth, especially towards taking total accountability to recognize that if we don't deal with our stuff, we project it into others and have a tendency to blame. So as to always take this stance where you learn to take total accountability for your own challenges and grow from these as opportunities to enhance your own sense of self and identity so that you can always transcend and become an individual that's a lot more empowered.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing such amazing, empowering messages. Professor Lene and Debbie, thank you so much for making the time to join us today. Before we do wrap up, we are going to be joined by one of SADAG's project managers, Lynn Levoskachny, who will be sharing more information about SADAG's corporate wellness services. Lynn, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lebo, and hi, everyone. Apologize for the light. We're having technical challenges with electricity and also. But I still thank you so much for the opportunity to speak about SADAG's corporate wellness pillar. I believe strongly in one simple but very powerful principle, and that's humans helping humans. Because I think before someone is an employee or a manager or a leader, they're first and foremost a person. And a person can be juggling family responsibilities, financial pressures, illness, grief, relationship challenges, or just simply the everyday stresses of life. But people don't leave these experiences at the office door. They bring their whole selves to work every day. And that's why corporate wellness is so much more than just the policies and the programs and the procedures. It's about creating workplaces where people feel seen, feel heard, valued, and supported. And it's about making it okay to say I'm struggling and knowing that someone will listen without judgment. I'm going to just quickly share some slides. They're very simple ones, so just bear with me. Or I can't share slides, so I'll just carry on talking. It's all good. So at SADAG, we help companies make mental health more accessible, practical, and meaningful. Every company is different, so we tailor our approach to each company's unique needs, culture, and budget. We offer awareness talks, interactive webinars, trainings on topics like stress, burnout, resilience, and anxiety, depression, of course, suicide prevention. But our goal is not to simply share information. It's about starting the conversation that'll help reduce stigma and hopefully encourage people to reach out for help before they reach that crisis point. And our work goes beyond education. Depending on a company's needs, SADC can also establish either a dedicated or a shared helpline service that would provide employees and their families with compassionate support. Our counselors can provide psychoeducation, emotional support, mental health screenings, guidance to appropriate resources, ultimately making sure that no one has to face difficult times alone. And I think that's the key thing. But also for companies looking for a more comprehensive employee assistance program, we can also provide registered counselors or social workers who can then support employees in a more structured, ongoing, short-term solutions type focus and psychosocial intervention. So whether a company is looking for a preventative mental health education, ongoing emotional support, or something like a more integrated well-being program, we work collaboratively with that company to design a solution that would align with their specific needs and their budgets. Ultimately, it's a fact of there's no one size fits all. And every company is different and every workforce is unique. And that's the beauty of it all. And at the heart of everything we do is connection. We go back to the humans helping humans. Sometimes the most powerful intervention isn't having all the answers. It's knowing that someone is there to listen, to understand, and to remind you that there is hope. And when companies invest in people, they build more than productive workplaces. They're actually building trust. They're building resilience. They're building cultures where asking for help is seen as a strength and not a weakness. And when people feel supported, they don't just perform better, but they actually live better, which to me is it's a win-win. So at SADC, we are so proud to stand alongside companies helping create better workplaces and workplaces where compassion is part of the culture, where mental health matters every day, and where humans help humans. And that's my little punt on SADC. Please, if anyone would like to find out more information about SADC's corporate services, reach out to me on admin@anxiety.org.za.
Sure, Lynn, thank you so much for that. And I love what you said there on humans helping humans. And thank you for sharing that information. And if anyone is interested, like Lynn has shared, her email address is admin@anxiety.org.za. From us, thank you so much for joining SADC's Ask the Expert session. If you need additional support or would like more information about the resources that SADC offers, including free support groups and other programs, please do visit our SADC website, which is www.sadc.org, or contact our helpline, which operates 24/7 on 0800 456 789, or you can send us a WhatsApp on 087 163 2025, which operates from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The session has been recorded and you can watch it again on our YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms for more articles, updates, and helpful information. From us, take care everyone, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.